Hello, this is on the French and Indian War. Leading up to 1753, the English held less territory than the French. As you can see here, the English as British are in green and the French are in blue. The French settlements spanned from Quebec to New Orleans in North America. The English were confined to lands between the Appalachian Mountains and the Atlantic, though they had charters for land beyond the mountains, which is this disputed territory. The French sought to keep the British trapped on the coast, while the British wanted to expand west for land and fur trade opportunities. This rivalry had caused tensions for nearly a century. Virginia, especially constrained, was blocked by both French territory and natural barriers. While it was expected conflict would occur with the French, it was not foreseen the mistake George Washington would make in the spring of 1754. In the spring of 1754, George Washington led a surprise attack on the French, successfully defeating them before retreating to Great Meadows, where he hastily constructed Fort Necessity. As you can see in the background, it was not a good fort, which is probably why the French launched a counterattack and seized the poorly fortified outpost within a month. Following this defeat at Fort Necessity, Washington resigned from his military position. In June 1755, British and French naval forces clashed in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, with the British emerging victorious. During this battle, the British captured two key French ships, the Alcide and the Lys. This naval success paved the way for British forces to quickly secure Nova Scotia from the French. However, in July of the same year, British fortunes took a downturn at the Battle of the Wilderness. This is not the Battle of the Wilderness in the background, it is just a random battle in the French and Indian War, where General Edward Braddock's forces were defeated in Pennsylvania by a combined French and Native American force. This defeat highlighted the challenges of a traditional European warfare in North American wilderness, facing against the guerrilla-style tactic Native Americans. In September 1755, the tide shifted again in favor of the British when Colonel William Johnson led his troops to victory against the French at the Battle of Lake George in upstate New York, marking another significant British victory during the early years of the French and Indian War. In late March 1756, the French launched an assault on the British-held Fort Bull, a key defensive outpost protecting the waterway connecting Albany, New York, to Lake Ontario via the Mohawk River. The French, supported by their Native American allies, overwhelmed the fort, burning it to the ground and massacring its defenders. This attack was a significant blow to British control over the region. Roughly a month later, in May 1756, Great Britain and France officially declared war on each other, marking the formal start of the 7 Years' War, 2 years after the war had already begun in North America. This global conflict expanded the hostilities already brewing in North America, and in August of the same year, the French achieved another victory, where they captured Fort Oswego, located on the banks of the Great Lakes, further weakening British positions in the region. In August 1757, French forces led by General Montcalm captured Fort William Henry, a key British stronghold located near Lake George in present-day New York. After days of siege, the British garrison surrendered under the promise of safe passage. However, as the British forces and civilians retreated, their Native American allies attacked, leading to a brutal and infamous massacre. Hundreds of British soldiers and civilians were killed or captured. This event is famously memorized in James Fenimore Cooper's novel, The Last of the Mohicans, which dramatizes the tragedy and its impact on colonial warfare. In July 1758, the French forces successfully defended and retained control of Fort Ticonderoga against a larger British force, dealing the British a significant defeat. However, the British soon rebounded by seizing the fortress of Louisbourg in the same month. The capture of Louisbourg was a critical victory, as it opened a route for the British to advance into Canada, gaining them greater strategic leverage in the war. As you can see in the background, there are multiple battles and the war plans that were seen in the French and Indian War. While this is not all of them, this does include many major ones. I would recommend looking at it and figuring out what's going on. In July 1758, French forces successfully defended and retained control of Fort Ticonderoga, a fort that will become important in the American Revolution, against a larger British attacking force, dealing the British a significant defeat. However, the British soon rebounded by seizing the fortress of Louisbourg in the same month. The capture of Louisbourg was a critical victory as it opened a route for the British to advance into Canada, gaining them greater strategic leverage in the war. In late August 1758, the British dealt a major blow to French communication and supply lines by capturing Fort Frontenac on Lake Ontario. This victory severed the French's vital communication link with their forces in the Ohio Valley, weakening their overall position in North America. This basically cut off the ability for the soldiers here under French command to be able to communicate with their commanders all the way over here, who were usually ordering them war. This basically put a very large strain on the guerrilla warfare fighters down here fighting against British invasion. In October of 1758, the British secured peace treaties with several Native American groups, including the Iroquois, Shawnee, and the Delaware, which helped reduce hostilities on the frontier and strengthen the British campaign. A month later, in November 1758, British forces captured the key French stronghold of Fort Duquesne. The British renamed the fort Pittsburgh, marking a significant shift in control over the Ohio Valley and setting the stage for further British advances in the war. In May 1759, British forces captured the French Caribbean island of Guadeloupe, dealing a significant blow to French colonial power in the region. In late June, the British took Fort Ticonderoga, which had previously eluded them, marking a victory in their campaign. Following this, in late July, British troops seized Fort Niagara, a critical stronghold on the Great Lakes, while the French abandoned Crown Point, further eroding their control in North America. With these victories, the British gained dominance over the entire western frontier. In September 1759, the British achieved a decisive victory in the Battle of Quebec. Both commanders, General Montcalm for the French and General Wolfe for the British, were killed in the battle, which was a turning point in the war and led to British control over Canada, sealing France's fate in North America. In May 1760, the French made a final attempt to retake Quebec with a siege, but it ultimately failed, solidifying British control over the city. By September, the British advanced on Montreal, and the city fell, marking the official surrender of French forces in North America and bringing an end to major hostilities in the French and Indian War. In 1761, the French made peace with the Cherokee Indians, further stabilizing the region as the conflict wound down and British dominance over North America became cemented. While there would remain one more French attempt at war and Pontiac's forces at large, the war was in function over at this point. Thus, funnily enough, it is still the 7 Years' War, considering it started 2 years before the European/Global 7-Year War and ended 2 years before it. Thank you for listening. If you have any suggestions or recommendations, feel free to tell me. Thank you, and have a good day.